Hello everyone, welcome to eShe TV. I'm Aekta Kapoor. Today I'm taking up the topic of animal welfare in India, and I'm speaking to two members of the Humane Society International, or HSI, which is an animal welfare NGO present in over 50 countries. HSI is working to promote the human animal bond, to improve farm animal health and welfare, to protect wildlife, and to promote animal free testing and research. My first guest today is Alokparna Sengupta, the Managing Director of HSI India. She's been working in this field for the past 15 years and has written extensively on animal welfare issues. She's been part of several government and scientific committees to bring in animal friendly policies in India. My other guest is Keren Nazareth, who is Senior Director for the Street Talk program of HSI India. She has experience of resolving stray animal conflicts in Asia and Africa and has also worked extensively in community mobilization, including pioneering work in non-traditional livelihoods for women. So welcome Alokparna and Karen. I'm so happy to have you here on eShe TV. And we're talking about animal welfare. So I'll start with you, Alokparna. There are a lot of stories that we read in the newspapers about, humans encroaching on forest land. And then at the end of it, the animals then attack the humans. And then the humans shoot down those animals because, they're eating their livestock. These stories of animal-human conflict are just becoming more and more. So what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, it's an important one, right? Because we are, as we move forward, the human-animal conflict is increasing further.
Yeah.
So we at HSI India, in fact, conduct a program. We carried a program with snakes. In fact, there's a lot of talk on tigers and elephant conflict, but human snake conflict has one of the biggest morbidities in humans and comorbidities, and it's not that the snakes survive either. So the fact is, both of us, both humans and animals, are at a loss because of these conflicts, and it's because
Mm,
we've stopped giving importance to how nature actually is and how nature and animal can coexist together. So right now we do have programs for that, and I think one of our core areas is to teach and to learn and of course impart that education about coexistence, and nobody knows it better than the people who live in these grassroots. For example, our snake work, we work with farmers, and similarly we have a program on elephant, because many a times, we can't change elephant behavior, right? Elephants are used to walking hundreds of miles per day, and
mm,
suddenly, if we build a golf place in between, or if we build some sanctuary with walls in between, how it's supposed to tell the elephant to divert? I mean, he or she, the elephant does not have a Google map for that. So here we are trying to understand their behavior and work around that behavior, because ultimately these are majestic creatures. These are great creatures who are important for the ecology, who are important for the well-being of the planet. And if slowly they start disappearing, then it's
mm,
going to be, I mean, we are already seeing effects of global warming and climate change as we speak. 4 states are under huge turmoil for floods and
mm.
flash floods
That's right.
and torrential rain. So we are trying by looking at coexistence methods through mitigation and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, Karen, would you like to tell us about this conflict in terms of the urban populations? We hear about animal attacks in the urban populations as well. So, what has been your experience? You've worked in Asia and Africa on this subject. People have been calling for, you know, getting rid of these stray dogs, and it doesn't seem to be any middle path somehow. And how do you deal with this?
Dogs biting children, right? It's
Mm,
it's not acceptable, right? I
mm,
mean, I have kids. I don't want them to be bitten. But the responsibility of creating a safe city, it does not only lie with one stakeholder. It lies with
mm,
various stakeholders, right? We need
mm,
to create safer cities. And we need to create safer cities considering all the factors that are in a city. You
mm,
see, when we are trying to create these smart cities, all we are talking about is infrastructure, right?
mm,
Like the development of a flyover is all that we'll talk about. What that
mm,
flyover will do to the ecology in that space, to the dogs in that space, to the people in that space. that is not even becoming a factor when we create this kind of development, right? Urban development is now largely being looked at as just building and more building. Yeah. And I'll give you a really small example, right? Outside my house, there's a new mall that's come up. And that land has lain barren for years. Yeah. It had trees, it had this whole ecology in it. And suddenly, in a span of 2 years, there is this mall. Everything that lived within it, whether there were birds, whether there were bees, whether there were dogs, everything is gone from there. And where do they go? They die or they are outside. And now, how does conflict happen? So conflict starts happening there. You're already starting to dislocate, you're already starting to relocate. And when that happens, the space outside hasn't increased. You've just pushed more dogs into a smaller area without any kind of process about what to do with these dogs. Are they sterilized? Are they vaccinated? It's really sad to see that the ones who are most vulnerable get affected by this.
Yeah.
It's mostly children, it's the elderly, it is people who are extremely poor and who live on streets. Right? These are our most vulnerable. And they're the ones who then have to bear the brunt of this development. Yeah. Also, what is our response system? How fast can we get a child who's been bitten immediate care? How well are our primary healthcare centers equipped? So the closest place should ideally be a primary healthcare center where a child can go immediately and get a rabies shot. Our primary healthcare centers don't have rabies shots. They don't have the vaccinations.
Oh.
We're not even in our local, the idea of being local and having those kind of solutions is missing. So what happens to the situation? It goes out of
Yeah.
hand. And then, of course, yes, that dog is to blame because it is the one that perpetrated the act. But we're not looking at that entire picture, and it's really sad we're losing these young children to something so horrific, and it's really unfortunate. But we need to, as a city, as people, as the fact that we have so many other countries to learn from, that we can do this better. And one example I like to share is like when we talked about polio eradication. Like, it went as a national campaign. It was like something that was everything, every resource, every person was put behind it to eradicate. Why? I mean, we can do something like that to eradicate rabies. We should do something like that to eradicate rabies as well. It's in this day and age, why do we have something like rabies still in India? So we need to start working at the conflict. What we're doing in HSI India is, while we do animal birth control, that's one part of the solution. We're also trying to do it in a scientific way that we can cover 80% of the population in a short span of time. But
Okay.
simultaneously, we're engaging with the community. We're
Okay.
talking to the community where these dogs live. We're talking to people who have issues with their neighbors, right? One neighbor is feeding a dog outside another neighbor's house. That's not
Yeah.
acceptable. Why can't we be tolerant to understand not everybody will love a dog? So we need to make sure that we make space for our neighbors who are scared, who are afraid, who cannot engage with the dog. And these are the conversations we are actually having. We've seen some great success where we are engaging with communities, where we talk to communities about how we can peacefully talk about stuff. So rather than take a very angry approach, and we need to figure out how does that community get together and figure out, yes, you want to feed a dog, please find a space which is not encroaching other people's walkways. Find
Okay.
spaces or find timings that will suit everybody else and not just you.
Okay.
So there has to be tolerance in this whole process, which we are missing. We need to bring that back.
So when you discuss these with the communities, what are the tips that you give them?
So often it's the communities who will come up with a solution, right?
Okay.
Or it's mostly an issue that's happened in a neighborhood. There are dogs missing, or there are dogs barking, or there's a dog that has now become so attuned to feeding, being fed at a certain spot, it's not going to change its location. So we
Okay.
kind of literally come down to that kind of micro detail and then say, now what do you think should be done, since this neighbor of yours is obviously really uncomfortable? Their kids need to play here. So the communities are coming up with their own solutions, finding their own spaces to kind of sort the problem. And I think the Delhi High Court, order, which also said that these are the things that we need to do to make sure that we have safer communities. It's not just about ABC. ABC will sterilize, vaccinate, and put that dog back. But that dog will then definitely need to, there needs to be more engagement to understand that that dog cannot turn around and bite a child, or should not be in a space which might encroach where a walker is going. So things
So
like that.
does the sterilization process really work? I mean,
sterilization is not going to sterilization is not going to tame a dog. Okay, so those are myths rather than told that it'll become calmer, it'll become less aggressive. That's not going to happen, right? But
Okay.
what sterilization will do is will make sure that females don't have puppies. Most often,
Okay.
females will bite when they have puppies because children will come to pick up and play with the puppies, and the mother is most protective at this time. That's when most bites happen. Or if somebody is passing by and she feels that there's a threat to my pups. In the case of the male and a female sterilization, that will go down. Female and male mating, the aggression in that period is pretty intense. You'll see these packs of dogs chasing these females. So when you do
Yeah.
sterilization, that reduces. So you
Okay.
don't have packs kind of going across trying to find this one female and chase her. In terms of even male dogs, it's not. I mean, they will not now move too far to either
Okay.
find a mate or find food. They'll sort of stay in the area where they are. So there
Okay.
are these different things that sterilization will do.
Okay.
The good thing about our program of sterilization is also we have to vaccinate every dog against rabies.
Okay.
So, effectively, we are also working towards sterilization and vaccinating of that 80-85% of the population.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those. Okay. So I'll come to you now, Alokparna. You have this program for animal-free testing and research that you're promoting that in the industry. So can you tell me like what works and what doesn't work, and how far can we actually limit animal-free tests? I mean, limit the use of animals in testing and research.
I think animal testing is a very, very complex issue, especially given the fact that we've gone through a place at the time in the pandemic where there were no vaccines, and it was accelerated so that we could reach, vaccines could reach us just before the second wave started. And since the vaccine has been in place, things have been much, much better, right? So one of the things that the problems of animal testing is that, one, it's not completely accurate. It takes huge amount of time and a huge amount of resources. At least 12 to $15 million are taken for one drug to be passed. That's the amount of money that is required. So what we are trying to do is that there are alternatives, but equating an animal model to a non-animal model is wrong, because there are different layers of testing that is required, where you may use different doses of or dose groups of animals, but here you will use different methods of non-animal methodologies. What we are trying to work on is so that the government and funding agencies, private and public, give their funds towards non-animal methodologies, which can be then used to develop certain models which are not animals, with respect, and that is for the research part, right? With respect to regulatory testing, there has been a lot of progress. For example, animal testing on cosmetics is banned in 41 countries. 42, in fact, Canada is the 42nd country to have ban animal testing on cosmetics. As and when there are progresses, the government needs to be taking a step forward and removing animal tests, because nobody enjoys doing tests on animals. It is unlike what people say, there's a huge burden on the system infrastructure itself. You have to source animals, you have to feed them, keep them alive, ensure that they are kept well. You have to hire a vet, you have to hire animal caretakers in the animal house, and so on and so forth. So in a nutshell, the answer to your question is some things have alternatives, some things don't, but but again, creating an equivalence for animal tests versus non-animal tests does not work, because animals itself are not as, if the levels that we want to compare today were tested back in 2016, based on today's methodology, none of these animal tests would have gotten approved, because rats and mice are only about 50 to 60% similar to humans. But we have accepted that as a gold standard, and we are continuing to test it. But nowadays, even if a non-animal test is 95% or 97% accurate, they'll still say, okay, what about the 3%? So in a way, when we ask for non-animal tests, they're like, okay, show us the data that it is accurate to non-animal animal tests. But the minute we change the say and we say don't use animal tests, they're like, oh, okay, but show us more accuracy. So that's the problem. But I mean, I don't want to repeat myself, but it's some are available, readily available, some are not. And what we are working on is that funding agencies put their funds towards development of non-animal technologies, because with
Right.
organ on a chip, disease organs on disease plates and things of 4D systems, 3D systems, 3D bioprinting. You can print a organ and study it. There are so many avenues to do it. We can definitely look to a future without animal testing.
And we also use animal testing not just for pharmaceuticals, but also for cosmetics. And I think that has been a big issue the world over, that people are saying, why should we buy products that have been tested on animals? So there
Oh,
has been a push from the consumers as well, right?
yeah. So, for example, Europe, which is the biggest market for cosmetics, banned animal testing in 2009. So that's quite a long time back, right? And banned the sale and manufacture of animal testing in 2013. So cosmetics is still, actually a gateway to more complex issues. So cosmetic testing, India banned in 2013 and 2014 in animals. And like I said, 41 countries have banned across the
Mm,
world. Canada is now the 42nd country. So cosmetics is just a small, like a drop in the ocean of animal testing, because there are so many countries, including India, who do not publish their animal testing data. How many animals are used? Nobody knows the limit. Nobody knows the number, because people don't even consider it important. People are thinking, okay, drugs are being manufactured, vaccines are being manufactured. What significance is the life of animals? But it's important to note these things down and to have the numbers there, so that we know that where are our, ultimately it's all public money, right? Where is our public money going to, if not testing, or if not creating better health products, better things for the health of the society, be it
right.
human or veterinary.
Yeah, I remember this case in Pune where a lot of dogs were rescued, beagles, or there was
Correct.
this big case, and one wonders, because these dogs have been kept in the labs and they're traumatized, and then when even people adopt them, they're unable to live with humans, and there were further incidents, and they again had to be taken away from the homes and things. So, what happens to these animals once they're rescued from these labs, and I mean, what happens to them?
So India goes through follows a 3R principle, which where now a fourth R has been added. So 3R means replace, where you can replace the use of animals, replace, where you can reduce the use of animals, reduce. If you can't replace or reduce, then the third one is, can you refine the method? So if you are injecting an animal or making it very invasive, can you make it non-invasive?
Okay.
And the fourth one is now rehabilitate. So
Hmm.
if an institution does not require these animals, they will
Hmm.
then have to rehabilitate the animals, and that is
Hmm.
through organizations. Now, you might know that there are organizations already who are rehabilitating beagles, for example.
Hmm.
And there is one organization in Bangalore called Free Girls, which is the Free Beagles, right?
Hmm.
Free Girls of India. And so many a time, so since Free Girls sort of came about, it has been much more organized, where they take in these animals, train them, and work on their anxiety, because these animals are completely anxious, right? Constantly
Hmm.
scared of being hurt, and most of them have kidney or liver issues because of the kind of testing that has been done on them. Or
Hmm.
their skin has been burnt through because of the marking, or because of some sort of testing.
Yeah.
So these animals are now, what some organizations do, such as Triggers, is that they train them, they ensure that they analyze the behavior of these dogs, and then they put them up for adoption. So if a beagle does not get along with other animals, then you don't
Hmm.
put them in a house with other animals, or does not get along with a child, then you put them only with no
Hmm.
children homes. So that's what
Hmm.
is done. But unfortunately, the government is coming up with more and more sad regulations, where in the last few years they've come about with regulations which are saying use street dogs for vaccines, use horses which are retired from carriages or from army horses, you can use them for vaccine production, because anti-sida is produced, like all your vaccines and anti-sida are produced through horse serum. So
Okay.
that's a very, very unfortunate, development that's taking place. And we need more funders and the government to put its money where they want to. You can't be a developed country by just building flyovers. You have to develop it
Mm.
through your technology, which includes this sort of medical technology.
Yeah. So, tell me, Karen, now we're talking about the conflict that has already been created because of so much development in urban, rural, all kinds of areas because of human settlements, human dwellings, human activities. What is the way forward, and what is your recommendation to regular people, ordinary people who are maybe not in positions of authority, who can take decisions for mass populations, but how do we as ordinary people, what should we keep in mind in terms of the space that we use and having respect for the animals in that space?
It is important for us to ensure that our government does what it's like also set out in the animal birth control rules, right? Like our cities need to be held responsible to say start an animal birth control program, but start it well, do it well, because there's a lot of cruelty there as well.
Mm,
Simultaneously, as a person, a citizen, know what the rules are. Like, don't ask to relocate dogs. People
mm,
call in and say just remove this dog from this area. It's illegal to do that. There is a reason behind it. If you remove one dog, another one will come. So there's a vacuum. And
mm,
I also feel like I think it's about creating more tolerance. So
mm,
if you have a neighbor who has dogs, understand what their needs are, and if you have a neighbor who's scared of dogs, understand what their needs are, and sort of come to an agreed upon 50-50 sort of a compromise situation where everybody can be accommodated. We need to
mm,
start accommodating each other and animals. Especially the strays on the street. I mean, at the end of the day, rain, shine, monsoon, winter, they're out there. The
mm,
least we can do is be compassionate, and India has a history, it has its legacy in compassion for
mm,
animals, and we need to start reviving it house to house, neighbor to neighbor, street to street.
mm,
But it is also important for us to know that there is a law that also protects
mm,
these animals, and we should work within the law. We can't
mm,
be calling up people and saying take these 5 dogs away, or getting dogs relocated or moved away, or worse. I mean, there are so
mm,
many situations, and I
mm,
want to say this particularly on vehicular accidents, because we just witnessed one yesterday, and it is horrifying. A large SUV just literally ran over this dog in a busy street and
mm,
didn't
mm,
stop, just like went on, didn't stop to check,
mm,
nothing. And I
mm,
think that's what we need to start. How can we do that? What does that say about us?
mm,
Where are we losing? How are we desensitizing ourselves so much that a life
mm,
is that purpose that we wouldn't even stop to check? And I
mm.
think that's what I want us to. I mean, I think that's at least my message to
Yeah.
people.
If I could just add, uh, we always think the problem is with the street dogs. It's also about responsible pet ownership, where we need, as pet owners, if we are dog owners, we need to sterilize and vaccinate our dogs. We need to ensure
Yeah.
they are on leashes, or that they are trained and they don't go mate with a female, or a female on the street who are then giving littering with puppies, and then there is a hell of a life full of hell for the puppies on the street. We need to
Yeah.
ensure that our animals, pet animals, just because they have parents or owners as such, I don't like the use of the word owners, but that they can't just be allowed on the street, and then there is a conflict, and then the street dog faces the brunt of it, right?
Mm, mm,
We, as pet parents, we need to be responsible. Just because they are breeds does not mean we can breed them, and it is illegal. Through your show, I want to say that it is illegal to be breeding animals at home. You cannot go to a friend's house and say, let's your dog, your male and my female, let's mate, and then we'll sell these. You need to have a license. You have to be licensed by the state animal welfare board. So this is all illegal, and you should be spaying or neutering your animal, so that ultimately, if you love dogs, that is where it starts. not only feeding your dogs, but colony dogs also you need to, your community dogs you need to be spaying and neutering and ensuring that there is no reproduction. Because if I want 5 Labradors around the house, you are bound to have 15 or 20 mixed Labradors in the street, because that's how much, animals are just let loose, pet animals, and then they go around meeting. And half the time, many people, many consumers, when they go to pet shops, they are wowed in by cute Labrador looking puppies, but actually they're mixed dogs because some female littered on the street, probably from Labrador. So responsible pet ownership is very, very important.
So yeah, so I also want to know your last thoughts on the topic of human-animal bonds. You're talking about pet ownership, but what about the larger human and animal bonds that I think HSI has made part of its mission to promote that? So how do you do it at a larger scale, not just dogs, but like you talked about horses and about other animals who are being used for, they're used on farms, they're used for labor, camels are used, buffaloes are used. So about the whole ecosystem of how we treat our animals, not just stray animals, but also animals that are used as cattle.
uh, I mean, like you said, we have campaigns for and programs to help all sorts of animals. If you see our current logo, every animal that is there in it, that and their classification, we help all of them. We try and do it from a very protection oriented space, where we say that we currently, animals do not have rights in the legal system. So it is up to us to be protecting these animals. And with as we are moving into we're in the 21st technology century. There is 21st century technology available. There is AI now. Is it really required that animals are used for so many things, like bullock carts, animals, jallikattu? I will just say it and not even go there, because are animals really required for our entertainment when we have a phone in our hand 24/7? Right. So how do we promote human animal bond is by trying to go back to the most basic understanding as that we have as children, is we have an enthusiasm and curiosity towards nature, and that's a positive one, which through our adulting journey, it becomes a little toxic, quite toxic. So can we go back to the basics and think about nature and animals as one? One of the biggest campaigns that we have is of farm animals, where we treat farm animals. Our understanding of chicken is a chicken to eat, not a chicken which has its own reasons for existing on the planet. When we think about chicken legs, it's about we don't think of chicken wings as wings to fly, but which is present in a bucket for us to eat. So how do you go back to that and say that, present these animals as sentient beings, each on their own on this planet for their reasons? For example, I was just telling my relative yesterday that so they were like, "Oh, how do how about keeping chickens as pets?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, but did you know that chickens are as intelligent as 2 year olds, and pigs are as intelligent as 3 year olds? Pigs are more intelligent than dogs." And so many of them were surprised, and they thought that instead of having a dog which might be a menace to keep at home, maybe get a fish. But what are you teaching that child to get a fish in a, it's nice that we talk about finding Nemo and finding Dory, but nobody takes the basic lesson from there. The children are the future, and they, I think, understand they understand the issues. And so we reach out to a lot of community children across colleges, and I can say children because they're still young teenagers who understand, who want to do better. And one of the things that we do is have, go vegan, have a plant-based approach, because that's the first thing you can do, is you can stand up for animals when you sit down to eat. That's when you can take your own action, then you can go and teach others. And that's something that I find very, very powerful when speaking to people.
Yeah. So thank you both for sharing your thoughts and for sharing your time and being here today. I think it's important that more people talk about these issues, and we become more aware of the harm that we're causing the environment not just in our actions directly in contact with animals, but by the products we buy, by the lifestyle we have, by the foods we eat, So it's important to be conscious that every action we take is related to some other being in the environment. So thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for being here today on eCTV.
Thank you so much, Aekta. Thank you for this opportunity to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Aekta.